Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Broken Beautiful Me. And I am so excited today for our guest, Donna Star. So, after a successful 30-year career in corporate America, Donna Star is a highly sought after certified executive coach and professional speaker. At the heart of Donna's success is her ability to connect with people in a deep and meaningful way. She is smart, funny, intuitive, and says it like it is. I love that. Donna has always been intuitive, but she received formal training from a forensic medium and taps into this skill to help bring her clients even greater clarity. Donna is a proud Bostonian with two amazing adult children. And yes, she loves Boston sports. We're going to talk about that. In her DNA, in her spare time, you can find Donna reading, traveling, walking, playing word games of any kind, except Wordle, and spending time with close family and friends. Donna, welcome so much. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. When I got the notice from you that you wanted me to be on the show and I saw the title, Broken Beautiful Me, I was like, huh, it teared me up a little bit because isn't everybody broken and beautiful in some way?
Absolutely. And being broken makes us more beautiful.
It does. Let's the light in.
Yes, it does. So, to begin with, just for our listeners who maybe don't know too much about your work and your background, can you just kind of give us a brief overview of your life?
Sure. I worked for 34 years in corporate America. I started in an ad agency, taking ad copy over the phone on a little typewriter and really lived through the internet age, faxes and then the internet. And I remember my first email that I sent. And then I worked for a company called monster.com, which really changed the way companies recruit and find talent online. So I really became part of the digital revolution. And I'm very fortunate, had a great career, but deep down in my soul, it's not really what I wanted to do. I was just good at it. And I also had a lot of stuff, broken pieces of me that I thought were healed. And I didn't realize that I needed to be healed to bring a better person to work and to believe in myself more. So in my book, I talk about not enoughness and the way it drives us. So after 34 years and my second graduated college, I was like, it's my time. And now I'm an executive coach and I have a lot of experience to bring to my clients because I was in boardrooms and had politics and promotions and people that didn't speak to me anymore and people that I still talk to. And so I bring all of that plus coaching, plus just life experience and intuition. And it's a beautiful combination to help my clients as an example.
Talk to me about the intuition. I'm really intrigued by that and your work, your training with this forensic medium and how that really helped your practice.
I always everybody has intuition, like across the board. I am not unique. Um, but I could read a room. So I was in sales. And so I'd walk in a room and I'm like, that person doesn't like us, or that's the person we need to turn over. I could just feel it in my body. So I always felt, and it made me, I think, a pretty good salesperson and a pretty good people leader because I could feel what was going on. Although I didn't manage during COVID, I think that would have been challenging, right? Because you don't see people in an office.
Yeah.
Um, and during COVID, my family and I go to this medium in Medfield, and she's Medfield, Massachusetts, and she might be in Millis, and she had to bring her business online, and she was teaching classes on intuition. And I was like, well, who doesn't want to tap into their intuition? And you're cooped up at home, so I took a class with her for a year, and it really was about mediumship. And she was a police officer and grew up in a very Catholic family, and seeing things was not actually very well approved. And then she just couldn't ignore it anymore and left the police force and became a full-time medium. And she gets called into cases. That's why she calls herself a forensic medium. So she, missing persons, that sort of thing. So over the course of a year, she said, the biggest difference between intuition and logic is, do you think or you know? And your logical brain takes over. So when you say, I think, you're using your brain. When you say, I know, you're likely using your gut and your intuition, which uses logic also. And
Right.
so it was really intense training for a year, like a really intense. And I use it with my clients. I don't always lead with that, but if I feel something profoundly, I get some hits in my body, usually my left shoulder. And I will just say, I think there's something here. Do you mind if we stay here a little bit longer? And, it just kind of unfolds because it's their experience, not mine. But I know something is here for us to tap into. And I do guided meditations with a lot of my clients, and I'm in the meditation with my clients. So I can see sometimes what is going on as you know,
Mhm.
I know that seems weird, but if I say, who are you seeing? Sometimes I will get a hit and I'll know if it's an older person, younger person. Uh, so
That's amazing.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's also scary because you want to use that skill wisely. And, so I treat it like a gift, a gift that we all have, but that I can tap into. And, I had a close friend recently who lost her husband suddenly, and he has been sending me messages to her. So I feel pretty privileged and scared and honored and all the things to be able to bring those messages to her. I'm not asking for them. They're just
Right.
they
Yeah.
just arrive, and yeah, I can't, yeah. So it's hard to talk about intuition, right? Because it's sort of a nebulous topic, but I feel things profoundly.
But I actually, in thinking about intuition, and I have learned over the years, especially since my son passed away, to just trust that gut feeling and to move in a direction. And, I didn't like I was about strategic planning, um, and having everything like lined up. And then all of a sudden I'm just kind of wandering where I think I should go in my life. I started to listen to that voice a little bit more. And I feel like just I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but in today's world, we're being fed, force fed in some cases, so much information that our intuitive powers are just
They're very blocked.
they're blocked because everybody else is telling us what we should be thinking and what we should be doing and what we should be watching. And so it requires a stillness, right? To
Yeah,
really tap into it.
it does require, we live, and I participate in this. So I am not above the comment I'm about to make, which is we live in a very quick fix world.
Mhm.
And if you really want to do deep healing and deep knowing, you have to tap into yourself. That the answers aren't external, they're internal. Not
Yes.
every, and I think that's what you touched on. And we talked about before we got on the call today, you and I, when we were doing our intro with each other, that whole idea of being hard. When something is hard and you're clenching your teeth and you're stressed out all the time, you're not really allowing the light to come in because there's no room. You're like blocking and tackling all the time. And when you're blocking and tackling, there's no ease in your body and nothing. You're just blocking everything, feelings, emotion, and intuition for sure.
And when you are in that state, and in my work and in my own personal life, I experienced it. When you're in that state where you're closed off, you're also blocking love.
Blocking.
You
So true. Yeah, yes, Kelly. But not only are you blocking love, you are not. There's giving and receiving. So what I love that you talked about is receiving. You probably are giving quite a bit during this,
yeah,
but you're not receiving anything. And really, to live a fully expressed life, you have to receive.
you do. And that was the work, that question. We talked about it before we press record. What if it didn't happen?
That is like my mantra. I've gone through a lot of trainings, and I have so much to say on the heart. Like maybe my next book will be about why does it have to be so hard? Is I was raised that way. Like study hard, compete hard, don't quit. The messages I got from my parents, which of course they got from their parents, was never give up, dig in, do your best, and don't you know. So I went into the workforce thinking I had to work harder than everybody else. I used to, show up earlier or stay later. Something about it felt like I had to dig in. And it got me pretty far, I have to say. So, a lot of my clients will say, well, you got to be an SVP at a global company. Why wouldn't I do exactly what you did? Because it came at great personal cost to me, because I know it doesn't have to be so hard. That I took a lot of years out of my life because I worried, I ruminated, because I beat myself up. And when I worked with my coach, my second coach, she was a mindset coach. She is a mindset coach and she's amazing, Tracy Lake. She would come to the call and say, "You're doing great, Donna. Like, you're becoming a coach, you're getting new clients, you're building programs." And I'd be like, "Uh-huh, uh-huh." And she'd say, "Well, I'm not feeling that from you, that you understand that you're doing well." And I said, "Well," and she said, "Are you waiting for the other shoe to drop?" And I'd say, "Yes." And she said, "What if I told you, and I won't swear on your broadcast, that you're the effing shoe?"
So great. Oh my God, that speaks to me so much.
I got it on video. I was like, wait, we got to capture that moment on video. That's amazing. And, I wrote about it in my book, and I can't tell you how many people have responded to me and say, "I'm the effing shoe." You are. So the
Yeah.
weekends that I lost because I didn't win in a pitch or an employee left or I made a mistake at work, like, didn't have to be so hard. I didn't have to beat myself up. And last week I had dinner with, let me know if I'm going on too long, but there are so many examples of this.
No, no,
I
I
had
don't.
I had lunch with 2 of my cousins. I'm one of 16 first cousins, and we're all pretty close. So one of them was from Florida, one was in from Texas. Last week, I'm a space cadet. So I'm like, I left the restaurant. I lost my key. I had to backtrack my steps. I was like, "Where's the key?" While I'm looking back, I walk on a sidewalk that is newly paved.
Oh,
I hadn't even paid attention. I mean, and I see my footsteps. I'm like, and the workers are like right in front of me. And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm such an idiot." And I just raised my hand. I'm like, "That was me. I'm so sorry." And then I go back to my car and I'm like, "I got to find the key though. I got to walk back. Despite the embarrassment, I got to go back." And so I walked back and I find the key. And I was like, "Thank God I found the key." So I had lunch with my cousin and she had left something someplace and her sister had to drive her like a half an hour away to get the key. She said, "You seem like you're okay about what happened." And I'm like, "It happened. Like, there's nothing I can do about it." She was ruminating about the fact that her sister had to drive her someplace. She goes, "How did you move on so quickly?" And I didn't even realize how much progress I made. I know that seems like a little thing, but in the past I would have been like, "Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, how could I do that?" Now I'm like, "It happened. It's over. I'm done. I'm moving on. I can laugh about it." But she was so living in the moment of guilt and shame about an honest mistake that she made. And I don't think people realize how ubiquitous it is to believe that we have to be hard on ourselves, that we're not doing it right unless we're hard on ourselves.
yeah, that is so true. I mean, I think about the time that I wasted beating myself up over things that,
You couldn't.
you know, like I couldn't change them. It was done. It was finished. But wait, I've now moved into such a different mind space, and my husband's the same way. And we have this phrase where when stuff happens, and we are entrepreneurs, we have a few businesses, and so something is bound to happen any day of the week, because it is. It's life.
Any given day.
And we say, what we Tony say comes, he's soon.
I
What are you
love
gonna
that.
what are you gonna do? What would Tony say? So we always refer to Tony when we look at something that happened in the day that normally would have just kind of, I would have gritted my teeth and been pissed off for the rest of the day. And I'm like, what are you gonna do? And we just kind of move on. And it is such a healing thing to cut yourself some slack.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing. So, that moment showed me that I really have made some progress. There are other things that I'm a pro at beating myself up on, but progress, we'll take progress where it comes.
That's right. It's all like a little step, right?
Yeah.
So how does your work translate from like the people that you work with? How does it translate from the office to the home? So do you see kind of those beautiful overlaps in your clients of being kind of
Yeah.
expand? Yeah.
Yes. First, there's no way you can coach. You coach the person, not the situation, right? I mean, I do some situational stuff just because I might be working with people during career transitions. But if somebody comes to me and they say, and this is good for I want you to work on my LinkedIn profile and my resume. I'm not your coach because that's not where the work starts. The work starts for me to see how you show up on an interview, how you talk about yourself.
Yeah.
I have so many. I work with a lot of men, honestly. I also work with a lot of women, but women talk themselves out of jobs all the time. So no matter no, so if I work in their resume, like I haven't solved the problem. So one question that I will ask my clients to get back to your original question, I'm working with this 30-year-old woman who's extraordinarily talented. And she originally came to me and said, I want to look for another job. And my job is a monkey could do my job. And, on further probing, it was clear that that was not even close to the case. And so about halfway through a package, I'll say, are people noticing the change in you? Has anybody else noticed the change in you? And she said, yeah, as a matter of fact, my dad said something to me the other day that I'm showing up differently. So there's no way that work and home are, we coach a person. We're not compartmentalized just at work. And if we have a short temper at work, we likely have a short temper at home. If we're emotional, and I I'm sorry I use the word emotional because I actually believe that we hide too much of our emotion at work, and the only acceptable one is anger, to be honest with you. Like a guy can scream or a woman can scream, but they can't cry.
Yeah.
And, if I could change one thing at work, not that I want everybody to cry every day about all things, just let your emotions go,
Yeah.
within reason. So, yes. So for me, the translation is we are one human and we don't show up differently in different places. We might hide parts of ourselves to be a better employee or be a better husband or partner or friend or mom, but we are one person. So there's no way to coach without it affecting both parts of your life or all parts of your life.
And I remember when I started my nursing career, and it was kind of, your personal life after one because you're caring for other people, which it makes perfect sense. But you have situations in your work that you bring wisdom from your own personal life too. There's no way you can do it. It was such an unrealistic expectation really to put on anybody. And then there's things that you see at work that are genuinely joyful, genuinely upsetting, and you're just supposed to be this kind of flat. It just doesn't make sense, does it?
It does not make sense to me.
It doesn't celebrate the messiness and beauty of our humanity. I mean, we just,
I mean,
we're here.
we're not robots,
Right.
and that's like, I am, I worked in corporate for 34 years. I was in some of the biggest boardrooms, and I am not a button down, polished person. I'm a very direct person. I take my job seriously. But if you want me to be like, like this perfect robot of say the right thing, do the right thing, speak when spoken to, I'm not your person because I don't believe in that. I mean, we're not here for fake lives. We're here to live authentic. And I know the word authentic is way overused. We're here to be real humans.
Right. And it's like we have gotten away, and this is kind of veering off a little bit, but we've gotten away from our comfort with having conversations with people who don't agree with us, or being able to speak our mind uh, without fear of repercussions or being canceled. And I'm not saying that anybody should be out there being inappropriate. That's not.
No, no, we're not talking about that. We're just
But
talking.
we're talking about like our voices have been stifled anyway.
Yeah, true.
There's just so much noise.
So a lot of people that I work with, if they're having a conflict at work, right?
Yep.
I'm not telling them to go in and, or, they're on Zoom to go hit the person between the eyes. What would you want to say if you could? If you wanted to say anything, what would you say? And then we work from there.
Right.
Right. And then maybe we work on language, maybe work on softening. I hate the person I never want to work with them again. Well, that's not an option in corporate or in families, right? It's not an
Right.
option. So, okay, you know, what's the best possible outcome for a conversation? A lot of times in corporate, just to veer back on, I prepared for the worst to happen. That's very common in corporate risk mitigation. Let's prepare for the worst possible scenario. And actually, to some degree, I agree that we have to be prepared. But what's the best possible outcome? Because the worst possible outcome very rarely happens. Very rarely. I'm going to be homeless if I don't get this job, which is not to suggest that I don't care about people's finances. But in the amount of time you're on the planet, there's lots of steps in between losing a job and being homeless, right? I mean, and again, I'm not taking the homeless situation lightly. What my point is we go from 1 to 1,000 when we know that there's a lot of numbers in between. So, if I can work with my clients to say like, okay, and I love your jolt, I want to talk about that a little bit, but one little thing, one little step. What's one little, a lot of times in coaching, we're not swinging for the fences. We're trying to get on first base.
That's right. And you're right. Like the one little thing, the concept of one little thing for me was I started it at a time where I didn't know if I was going to be able to find one little thing. I was in one of the darkest places of my life.
I know.
And just
Well, I don't know, but I feel that. Yeah.
but I was like, okay, but you have a younger son who deserved a very happy life, right? And so we had to figure a way out. And so one little thing was, okay, I can't fix it, but I can find one little thing. I can hold on to that today. And we tethered ourselves to life, to the present moment. And it's interesting. I love to talk to people about when they use one little thing, because when you're in the present moment, you have no regret of the past, and you have no worries of the future, right? You are right here and right now where you're okay. And for me, that was incredibly healing. So it sounds like with your work, especially with your mindfulness training that you do with clients, that you are putting them in that mental space where they have time to be still and to be okay.
So I was probably the worst client, right? Like I'd come to my sessions, like one of my coaches used to make me sweat. Seriously. I was like so nervous. But I hope I don't do that to any of my clients, although I do love him. And one of my mindset coach used to, when I'd come in, I'd say, okay, this happened this week. This happened this week. I'm doing this, like, cause I'm all about productivity. I came out of corporate America and I'm like, I had goals to meet. I want to hit the quarter. I want to be the best coach possible. I want all the things all at once. And she would like, we're going to stop this session right now and you're going to breathe. And I was like, yeah, and I do that sometimes. Somebody will come to a session. I'm like, okay, stop this. Just gonna interrupt you for a second. Why don't we just take a minute and just, breathing causes you to be present.
Okay.
Follow your own breath. And it's so funny because if you were told me in corporate that breathing would be the magic elixir of life, I would have laughed at you. I would have been like, I would have rolled my eyes. I wouldn't have laughed at you, but I would have been like, oh, really? Like, sometimes in the coaching industry, like I read some posts and I love all coaches. I think there's enough room to go around. I am so, but sometimes I think we use words that I think people probably roll their eyes about. Like, I'm going to hold space for you. Like, okay, those are beautiful words. What does that mean to the layperson?
Right.
Well, I don't know. That's why I love saying it like it is, which by the way, doesn't mean I think there's anything wrong with those words. I just don't want to make sure that it connects to the person who actually needs to hear them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um,
And that requires intuition as well, right? When you are looking at a person who may be suffering or struggling, you have to understand the words that are going to work with that individual. you have to pay attention to the cues that they give you. And it's just, I mean, I think that that's another way that we have maybe moved away from active listening because we're down on our phone or our tablets and so we're not paying as much attention. But if they do give that moment to kind of read what that person who is sitting next to you is saying non-verbally, I think
Right.
that
And nonverbal clues are, you know, powerful, which is
I
why
mean,
that whole idea, I don't know if it exists anymore because not many people back in office, although Amazon came out this week, as you know, with a 5-day return to office, which I think is ludicrous. But I do think some time in office is beneficial for what you're talking about because you can't read a clue as
yeah,
easy. I have to as a coach on Zoom, but in general, I think it does help to be in the office a couple days a week to see your coworkers and feel what's going on with them in a different way that you don't always get on Zoom. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but uh,
yeah. I mean, to a point, I think though, I guess it depends on the conversation you're having on Zoom because
yeah,
I do feel like there's people that I talk on Zoom with that, you know, like we're having a conversation right now, kind of feeding off each
yeah,
other. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
I
But
think it's more a team situation for me, like how do the team
yeah,
work together?
that's
But it could be my age too, right? Because I do think collaboration happens at a water cooler. Those sidebar conversations can take place in a way that doesn't happen on Zoom because it's a time slot.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
You
And
know,
I'm of that age that I started with a typewriter and then with those like the fact that
but
the
we look way too young for that to be possible. So I just want to add that in.
29 forever.
I like, 20. Oh, I'm going to go with 30 because that's when I had my first child.
Oh, yes. Okay. Actually, you know what? I think I was start being one of the dumbass when I was even older. So maybe I have to go up a little bit higher than
Right.
from them. Because I
Yeah,
think I was the benefit.
I think it gives us wisdom, and I think that helps anybody that we're talking to, which doesn't mean we know. The other thing about that I love about coaching is it isn't about us, it's about them, right? I mean, the focus isn't on what we know, the focus is on what they know.
Yeah.
And so I feel like my role is, despite the fact that I'm trained in intuition, I have 34 years in corporate living and certified in a million things. Um, those gifts are only good if they help the other person. So the emphasis is never on me. It's always on the client.
Right. And do you feel like, almost like you're a bit of a liar or an instigator? Because the it's there already. They just need to rediscover. Me-
Yeah. I mean, there's, yeah.
Amen.
And people leave breadcrumbs, right? So if you ask a question in their silence, let there be silence. I know you talked about the stillness earlier, but stillness is also silence. And
Yeah.
I wasn't comfortable with silence before. I always thought I had to fill that. And when I became a coach and I realized that, wait, one of our prompts is, wait, why am I talking? Or, yeah, something like that. Yeah, wait. I was like, wow, it's so powerful to let somebody sit in their thoughts, somebody sit in their thinking. And that was new for me. And then some tells are, even if you're not intuitive, or I don't know, or it's fine,
Yeah.
depending on the way they say it's fine. There's like 800 ways. So there are some tells. So your point about active listening is so spot on, Kelly, because you really, really, in order to have better relationship, which is across the board what people want, is to have these closer relationships, whether it be at work, at home, kids, you have to listen.
Well, and if you feel, and everybody has experienced this where you have a relationship with someone and you are sharing with them, maybe trying to look through something, and you just know that they're not, that they're just not interested.
Yeah.
And or maybe not interested is not the right word. Maybe they don't have the capacity to sort of take in what you're saying at that moment. And to be heard is one of the most feeling things that can happen to a person, to feel heard and seen.
In one of my courses, I think I have a quote that says, feeling heard is so close to being loved that for many people, it's the same thing.
It's beautiful.
Loss of, I don't know, something, the quote is something like that. And that is the truth. You can't feel loved if you don't feel heard
Yeah. Mhm.
or seen, whatever the word is you want to use.
So, now would you say someone who is struggling right now? So, as we discussed earlier, I work primarily in the but you are bereaved at home and then you go into work and you're still bereaved. You're still going through that grieving process. So what would you say to someone who's going through that? Well, how do you navigate that? How do we help our coworkers understand where we are? Because I think that's a challenge for people because people don't necessarily know what to say. And it's no fault of their own if they haven't experienced something like a loss. Um, So how do we help the person who's grieving, the person who's the coworker who wants to help them because he wants?
Yeah. So you and I have, before we even met, and when I read about you, I'm like, we're going to have so much to talk about with grief because I lost my mom on my first full day of corporate work. Now I was interning at an ad agency and I came back. So you have a week of bereavement leave, which whatever.
CS.
Some companies have done away with that. Thank God. Um, and I remember coming back the following, so my mom might have died on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it was Thanksgiving week. So I come back into the office the following Monday or Tuesday, and my neighbor, who I was close with, my next, whatever, the next desk, had come back from Hawaii. So we both were out for the week, and she's like, "How was your week?" And I was like, we didn't have social media at the time. There was no Facebook. So, and I said, "How was your vacation?" "Great. I love Hawaii. I used to live there." And she said, "How was your week?" I said, "Well, my mom died." And she said, "What are you doing here?" Like, I don't remember much else, but I remember her asking me that question.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, um, so I have a huge issue with bereavement leaves, period. But in
Mhm.
terms of what somebody, and then my dad died recently within the last couple of years while I was writing my book. And so I wrote a lot about grief because he was slipping away from me and my family before he died. So there was a pre-grieving
Yeah.
period and I think people didn't know what to say. And I've had two friends recently who've lost their spouses suddenly. Uh, let them be. There's, I could cry thinking about this because there are no answers. We can't say anything that makes anyone feel better. And I know this is your specialty, so please tell me if I'm off base. To just let them be with you, however they are.
Yeah.
It's the only thing. We can't talk them out of grief. You can't talk somebody out of their feelings.
Yeah.
Just let them be whoever they need to be that minute. Because, so one of my friends lost her husband and she's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And it was her birthday yesterday. She would not celebrate with us. She would not do anything. You know, I, that's what she needed in the moment. Just let her be.
And when an individual knows what they need and what they suffer, I can't do this year. I maybe next year I'm gonna be able to do it this year. I'm gonna get this be still and quiet in my own state. That's okay. I mean, because there is no right or wrong way to be. We just have, but the thing is that again, you respect that person's wishes, but you're there and you're from here. If you need me, I'm right here. So that they're never alone and they know that, but that you're not saying this is the path that you have to go. It's a very fun big path. You have to walk down that path. That's the only option. It's just not good.
It isn't, the thing is, it's like as a friend or as a coworker, you want to help somebody. So you think giving advice or, I'm here for you. You know what one person did for me? She's a client of mine and was a coworker. And she said to me, "Tell me something about your dad that you loved." And I still think about that as one of the most beautiful things anybody has done for me is ask me to talk about them. Yeah, so that felt good.
One of the things that I say every time I meet a parent is they will and I lost my family this many years ago. This is what happened. Kind of goes through. Um, we learn a little bit more about each other, and I always have to ask the question: Tell me the meaning. Tell me the meaning. And it's just such an important piece of it because your dad is still your dad.
Right.
Not here in a physical sense, but he's all around you. That's my belief. My son is not here in physical sense, but I still have known him so warmly. And the work that, the work that I do, I call it seeing visible because I think that when we have people like your dad, your mom, and your friends' husbands, and they're great gifts for us. So you have to find a way to say thank you. And how do we do that? But by taking part of you and transforming it into something that it would be a person. And that doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't. So I would love your counsel on this one. So one of my friends who's grieving is barely oh, barely present in the world.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to watch
Mhm.
for me. But I still am just holding, coachy words, holding space, just showing up, meeting her where she is. Some days I get a little frustrated because I want more for her than this, but it's her journey. The other woman who lost her husband suddenly, like they were on the deck, he died like he was young man. So I've been going, she's my mentor. I write about her quite a bit. And she wrote to me this week. I check in with her all the time. And I said, "Do you want to go to lunch?" And she said, "I'm just not ready to do that." I said, "Okay, whatever you need." And she said, this past Thursday, she was supposed to go to dance with 5 other couples, her closest friends, 4 other couples. And she said, "I just don't know whether to go. I don't want to be a drag on them." And I don't have the answer, right? All I said to her was, if you go, there'll be some moments and there'll be other moments. And so whatever you decide, because it's not all going to, I guess my point behind that comment was it's not all going to be bad,
Right.
but I didn't want to use the words bad, good, sad, happy. I just would, you'll have some moments and you'll have other moments. I didn't know what to say to her because I can't be the deciding factor of it. Not that she was asking me, but she wasn't for advice and I'm not qualified for that. So that's what I said. So I don't know if I did the right.
It's very true what you said. There'll be some moments and there'll be other moments. There'll be some moments where, his absence is
Profound. And
profound and and then there'll be other moments where she'll be able to experience it in maybe a peaceful, joyful way. You don't know. You just don't know.
I
Like,
just, yeah, I just didn't know. So I don't know what she decided because I didn't also want to be on top of her, and say, "Did you go? Did you not go?" Like, I just want to give her, I mean, that's raw. That's within the last month. The other one's within the last year. So it's quite a thing. Um, and that, and you lost your son and I lost my nephew right around the same age. The grief just never leaves you. It gets better.
yes.
5 years later, I can have an episode about my nephew, and it just happens. I don't know what to say to people other than it's just there's the trajectory for grief is. I know for you this is obvious, but it's so not linear. But our society wants it to be linear. Like you have your bereavement, you come back to work, you pretend like it didn't happen. We're going to deal with you like nothing happened because we don't know how to treat you any other way. And it's just like, it's sort of mind boggling to me.
Well, and it's just such an antiquated view on emotions. They're working so much and seeing them, so having to see it on wellness and self care and the whole thing. But then you have 3 days to be back in 3 days ready to go. No, but it just life doesn't work that way. And my journey, it's funny because I was talking to someone recently about this, about the journey not being linear, and I described it as that set of Christmas lights at the bottom of the bin when you pull it out, and it's just it not like that's how I felt. I was just trying to navigate it, and you have to give yourself the time and the grace. You have to show yourself some grace, and we're not good at that because, especially as women, and in fact, we talked about that earlier, we beat ourselves up with things. So we think that you should be further along. No, you are where you are.
You are where you are. And it's a hard one, right? Because people want you to move on
Yeah,
because it's easier for them.
it is. And it's not that they don't love you; it's just they don't know how to navigate this. And the interesting thing that I learned over the years, because I went in my healthcare studies in university and whatever. I did the 5 stages of grief and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and all of those things.
I took out my class in college. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I studied all of that, and then when I found myself in the depths of despair, I was like, okay, wait, like where am I? And I wasn't anywhere on there. I wasn't. I didn't feel like I fit. And then as you go further out, and I talk to a lot of people that people think you're over free. But then, like for me, when my son's friends started to get married and have children, that was a different chapter. It was a really different chapter. And I love all of them. They are beautiful human beings. But it was hard. It was really hard for me.
So funny that you brought that up. Not funny, but
Mhm.
my nephew died 17 years ago, I want to say. I think
Yeah.
16, 17. And my middle brother, there were three of us, his oldest daughter got married. And that must have been, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe seven, not really sure. And my older brother, who's pretty much like, I don't need therapy. I had a great relationship with my son, Jason. I'm going to say his name.
Mhm.
And I did everything I could. And let's not try to get into the minds of somebody that would take their own life because we don't know what's going on there. And it's a dangerous place to be. So he's lived his life and he joyfully. And I'll tell you though, at my niece's wedding, he had a meltdown. It was at least 10 years later for the exact reason you said, because that was Jason's age. And Jason was never going to reach that age. And you know what? I've never seen my brother have a reaction like that in my life.
Maybe.
And he had to leave the wedding and go into his room. And he didn't plan that.
Maybe.
It crept up on him. And just like you said, with your the kids, they're getting married, having kids. When they have those life transitions and you realize that your own child isn't there, it must have hit my brother like a tsunami because I've never seen that before.
Yeah. It's in the early days of grief, and I know that you will know what I'm talking about. I always describe it as having kind of a lead jacket on, and then I would put all the rocks in my pocket, and I'd be walking around with this heaviness, and that's the kind of feeling that I've had at those different stages. So I'm sure, like your brother, it's yeah, you just have life moments, these chapters, and things bubble up. Things bubble up, whether it's your child or your parents, or, it's just you remember that person and then you acknowledge, okay, they're not here for this. And that always sucks.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up because I honestly, in the moment, did not really know what to do for my brother because I was at this joyous event and I saw him. I mean, there were some other mitigating factors, but really, I think that was the base of it. Anyway, it was just an interest. So Brink is just an interesting journey. And with my dad was 90. That was supposed to happen. Maybe not the way it did, but no one knows how they're going out of this world, you know? Um, I didn't realize uh, how profound it would be to lose somebody who'd been on this earth with me my entire life and loves me just the way am. And I thought, 9 years old, he's going to die. He's supposed to die. It's life. It's the circle of life, but it's not true. So at least it wasn't true for me.
Yeah. You know,
So
I think that we all have conditioned ourselves to say those things that, it's only an extended life, but it's silly that.
yeah,
Silly that.
yeah. So I didn't expect that level of grief from him. I did not expect it. I had physical pain in my body.
Yep.
And I was like, where is this coming from? I don't remember this when my mom died, you know? But so I honor grief in any way that it takes shape and form because it is so amorphous to me. Um, and also recognizing that with tremendous grief also was tremendous love. And so that's a gift that I know that you talked about, but that is how I feel about grief is what a joy it is to feel this level of grief, to know that the love that accompanied it enabled that grief. It's a weird way to look at grief, but that is the truth of the matter for me.
It really is. When you break it down, you look at their relationship with the person that is no longer here with you physically, and you say, my tears are related to my love. And you stop being against it. You just let it, because that's where I think we all need to not be afraid, that we need to be able to sit with that and say, this is all about how much I love, how much I still love, how much I will always love you.
And when I started out in coaching, I didn't know what to write about. So I had a coach that said, you should write because that's how you and email write because on social, you don't know, this is logistics, right? You don't own your base on social.
No.
So you should write. So I started to write. And then I started to write about my dad. And then I had people coming to me and saying, I love the way you write about your dad. And then I had somebody hire me because I'm like, I hope that my kids feel the same way about me as you feel about your dad. And so I'm not writing about my dad to get clients.
Yeah.
I'm writing about how I feel and how I deal with my feelings. So in the hopes that it helps somebody else. At one point, my son said, I think you're writing about your dad too much. And I'm like, I need to write about whatever I want to write about. But I take your feedback. Maybe, somebody else came to me who was going to do brand work for me and said, after I read some of your columns, I feel like I need a hug, need to give you a hug. And I was like, all right, maybe I've taken it too far. But I was writing about how I feel. And I think that's a way that I work through my grief.
Well, and that is another way that you say it like it is, right? You have
Yeah.
to be honest with your own journey. And some people will be able to accept it at that moment, and others just will not. And that's okay.
Well, I think it also shows that people are uncomfortable with emotion. I'm not writing, I'm curious how you feel about it, but if I'm writing about my dad because I miss him, but I'm talking about the gifts that he's bestowed on me, and that makes you feel like I need a hug, maybe you need a hug,
Yeah. Yeah. I
you know?
mean, sometimes people's discomfort with, because I talk and I agree
Yeah.
a lot.
That's the
Well,
yeah.
some people's discomfort with that is related to maybe how they are processing something in their own life.
Right.
And that's huge for them. If this
Triggering.
not hitting the nail on the head for you, ask yourself, why? Why is this following up in you today? Sometimes just asking yourself an internal question and just saying, okay, what's following up and why?
Yeah.
And then maybe sit down with, like I have a journal I write every day. And, sometimes what bubbles up, I'll write it, but then I'll go back and replay it and say, yeah, okay, gotcha. Now I know what you were thinking in your head, right? Sometimes it takes you a bit to figure out why have I bothered? It doesn't all, the solutions in your mind don't happen right away.
Well, that is a huge part of coaching. You had asked me how I deal with someone who's struggling, and I know we talked about grief because that's obviously a huge struggle. But when somebody is struggling, sitting with the struggle is the hardest part.
Yeah.
because you're trying to find a way out of the struggle. And actually, the best way, or one way, I won't use the word, I don't like to use superlatives because everybody's different, is to be in the struggle, live in the struggle a little bit. It's so uncomfortable to do that.
Yeah.
And we're really taught to like wall that off. And part of my work with my clients is to be in the struggle. What is it teaching you in the moment? What are you learning from the struggle? How do you want to be in the struggle? Are you comfortable in the struggle? More comfortable than coming out of the struggle? Because a lot of people are comfortable living in discomfort because that's what they're used to. They don't know another way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways that I deal with people in struggle. I don't have a pat answer, but I will say that I think we have to figure out what the struggle represents for the person.
Yeah. I think too, like at points in my own journey, I had to make decisions where I felt like I did sit with the struggle. And that was one of the gifts of desperation. We'll say is that sitting with me gave me perspective on life that I otherwise would never have been. But I also had to be mindful that the struggle piece of this, the struggle part, was a chapter out the book, and that I could once I process this, that I would be able to turn the page and not move away from the feelings, not forget what happened, but to turn the page and say, well, now what am I going to do? Where will I take this? All this wisdom that I've learned, how am I going to apply this to my life? So you're not denying, but you did have to make a decision at some point. Where do I go from here?
Right.
So how do you help people when they come to that spot? Where do I go from here? What do you say? And
Where do you want to go from here?
yeah, hey,
I mean, that's just off the cuff, but that's really would naturally be my first question. Because where do I go from here? Asking to a coach means, please help me decide. Tell me where to go. Tell me where I should go. And that's not the spot that a coach, maybe a therapist, but not a coach is in. The coach is, let's work backwards. Where do you want to be?
yeah,
And then let's work on a plan to get you there.
yeah,
1 ounce at a time. So oftentimes I'll use that you want to be in better shape, but you need to lose, let's say, no weight shaming here at all, but let's say you want to lose 25 pounds. Well, you don't lose 25 pounds overnight, despite all the drugs out there right now. You use it 1 pound at a time, 1 ounce at a time, half a pound at a time. So I think a lot of people think that they have to swing for the fences. When in reality, we're just, we're taking baby steps. And so that would be my natural answer, I think, response.
one of the books that I purchased shortly after Stephen died, and I put it in my purse, and all these years later, it's still in my pocket. It's called The Pocket Pema Chodron.
The pocket what?
Pema Chodron. So
Oh,
she,
I follow Emma Children. Yeah.
yeah, I love her. So it's so interesting to listen to her teachings about it. And she really, in this pocket note, it's like, it's literally this big. But when I'm in a waiting room or if I'm at a place like an airport and there's a lot of people who are trying to get their flights rearranged or whatever, I just pull it out and I just open up one chat and we just read it. And it talks about being uncomfortable, but making peace with the discomfort. And I was never taught that. That was not something that I had ever learned before.
Right.
And it's been a great gift for me to not run away from him and to understand that pain can change a purpose.
It's the truth, right? I mean, I never thought I would end up writing about my dad, and that's not all I write about. But people hear executive coach, they think I'm going to teach them how to be a better leader. And yes, I will do that, but it's not the way you think. You know, I have to get you to reconnect to who you are inside. What I say to anybody listening is I want to make sure your inside matches your outside. What I know for sure in my corporate career is that my face belied what was going on below the surface. They were not very often they were at odds. And I don't want that. I want, sorry for the word alignment, but I want them to mirror each other.
Mhm. Absolutely. So let's talk about that for a second. So what does it mean? Tell us about your book, Unsuccessfully Successful. Lessons from a workaholic corporate exec, single mother journey to a life of balance. I love this. So I want you to tell me about that because I think that's a good segue about being, on the inside and the outside is a lot.
So
So
my thank you for asking. My book was going to be called Silly, Say It Like It Is, because I felt like people withhold a lot of information and there's not enough fun. People think levity means this whole idea of everything needs to be hard. Well, people they find that companies that are more joyful actually have more productive employees. But, so anyway, I thought it was a nice meaning, double meaning. And then my editor asked me to write my bio. And I wrote, Donna Star was unsuccessfully successful for 30 years. And I was like, wait a second. And my editor said, I like that. And I just changed the name of the title because I think most of us have this idea of success, money, title, fame, things. Nothing wrong with any of that stuff.
no,
Nothing. There's no judgment on that.
no,
But what does it mean to you viscerally? And for me, like at the end of my corporate career, I wasn't able to digest food. My body was rejecting every ounce of the stress that I was putting it under. It was just time to go. And I wasn't listening to sleeplessness, anger, all those things that were causing me all these problems. So unsuccessfully successful means to me you don't have to live like that. The reason I'm so passionate about coaching is I don't want you to live with the paradigm that you think you have to live in. I want you to live in your truth. What feels good to you
yeah,
and what feels right to you. If you don't want that promotion and you're happy in your job, great. Like stop living by everybody else's rules. Start
no,
living by your own, whatever those are. So my work as a coach, when I started working with my mindset coach, is rewriting my belief system. And I didn't like, I don't even know what my belief system is, but it was workaholic equals success. So now I rewrite the rules to say intention equals success, not of hitting a goal, but hitting an intention. I intend to be the best coach I can be. That's that's an easy one for me, right? Meaning I get to decide what that is. So I don't know. I just don't want it to be so hard for other people. I don't want people to go through what I went through, which is I lost a lot of years. A lot of I lost a
yeah,
lot of quality time with my kids because I was distracted.
yeah.
And I see the effects on them today. And I'm not proud of that.
Mm-hmm. When you said just that, what is the definition of success? And mine has shifted so much over so many years, but I feel that same way that when I was in that corporate environment, I had different priorities. I had different belief systems. And when I tried to change, and this must be something that you see, I was like, what do I even stand for? I who am I? Like what do I believe in? You have to dig deep first and say, okay, I know this is not working. So what will work? Um,
For me. Yeah.
yeah,
I teach corporate men and women. And I remember I was teaching some yoga instructors and they were like, yeah, we took breathing all the time. And I was like, well, do you do it at work when you're stressed out? Do you take 30 seconds to just breathe when you, oh no, we do it before and after work. I'm like, okay, well, good for you. But, and I'm happy you do that. But when you're activated,
yeah,
you get an email or an angry call. That's actually also helpful to do your breathing then, like just to respond versus react, which is a common thing. A lot of times we're just firing away. So yeah, we get to define and what our lives, how we want to live our lives. But a lot of people don't believe that,
mhm,
you know? I know
So,
I could talk forever. So hopefully this is such a fun time talking to you today.
oh my gosh, I've enjoyed this so much, but I have two more left.
Okay, go ahead.
What's been the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself from this?
How much work I had to do on myself. It's honestly all the all the work that I've done shows me how much more work I still have to do. We are all works in progress. I'm very proud of who I am. I'm very proud of how calm I am now, how much I let my feelings show. You've seen it but I also realize I still have a lot more room to grow. And I try different things all the time. I had Reiki done last week. I'm working with a somatic healer because a lot of that trauma is still living in my body. And that's the most surprising thing is that I have more work to do.
And I mean, we're really discovering now that trauma sits so cellular level, and that you have to do the work to be able to release some of that. Mhm.
And that has been shockingly like I thought was done, relatively speaking, but I'm so not. And I'm honest about it because I want my clients to know that I'm not I'm just I'm a work in progress just like they are, you know?
So, I mean, and that's the beauty of it. I think when you stop being curious, when you
Yeah.
stop, when you think you have it figured out, that's when you need to start another chapter in your book and say, okay, I don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
I think it's perfectly fine for us to say, yeah, some days I'm not mess, some days I've got it together. And that's just who I am. I always feel like I need a shirt that says under construction because I am in a constant state of evolution.
So isn't that yeah, so that's my honest answer about that. And I think it's the truth for most people.
I love it. So in my group, just one of the things that we talked about earlier, I always kind of bonus to my followers. I say what I'm grateful for, and it's just little things, never anything material. But and then I ask them what they're grateful for because I want them to elevate themselves to that person range as well. So today I am thankful for this amazing conversation. I am so glad that I like not only that we had this chat, but I get to meet you. Like I just feel like you're my soul sister. So
I
thank
feel the same way. I love you. I want to meet you in person.
I know. Um, but I won't go to a Bruins game with you. I will support you if you're a Bruins fan, but just as a Montreal Canadiens fan, I need to take a stand there and say,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Well,
no,
imagine working for a New York-based company when you're a Red Sox fan. Like it was contentious during
ooh,
baseball.
I said it. And I say that in jest because
Yeah, me too.
my son actually, his girlfriend is from your area, your neck of the woods, and so she is a Bruins fan and he's a Canadians fan. They're making it work. So it's all good.
Make it work. I love some of my closest friends are New Yorkers. Right? The fact it's in our DNA to not like each other. I love New York.
I
Just
know,
not the
right?
Yankees.
So before we finish out, I just want you to tell everybody how can they find you? How can they find your book? Um,
Yeah, thank you. My book is on Amazon, Unsuccessfully Successful. I also have a journal, Say It Like It Is, that accompanies it because, that's our little baby steps. I
yeah,
have pretty active on LinkedIn, Donna Star and D Star Consultants on Instagram and Donna Star on Facebook. So I'm pretty active, and also my email list, which is where you learn probably the most about me. And you can go to my website, D Star Consultants, to sign up for my biweekly newsletter.
perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rock, for being on the show. I think so many people are going to just take so much from your wisdom today. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time.
And I loved meeting you, and I think the work that you do is just amazing, and we need more of that. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me on.